You know, a lot of people think I hate the original Resident Evil, but that simply isn't the case. I mean, I have a few problems with it, like the long door opening animations, the fixed camera angles, and the weird tank controls, and also that the game doesn't tell me what I'm supposed to do most of the time. But I still think it's a great game overall, and that there's definitely some room for improvement. Hey, it's Ethan, and in this episode, we'll be discussing Resident Evil 2, the 1998 version to be specific. Now, I played the remake first from 2019, but I feel that in order to talk about the remake, I have to talk about the original first, and in my opinion, the original Resident Evil 2 is one of the greatest sequels that I've ever played. But I think I have to explain first on how this masterpiece came about. It's March of 1996, and Capcom releases Resident Evil for the original PlayStation to a critical and financial success. Resident Evil was a remake of an old Famicom game originally, but most people don't know that. Since a lot of people liked Resident Evil, despite its horrible voice acting and janky controls, it did well enough that Capcom decided to make a sequel. So in April of 1996, development began on Resident Evil 2. The game's director was Hideki Kamiya, while the producer was Shinji Mikami, the original creator of the Resident Evil series, or Biohazard in Japan, and during the development they clashed on several occasions over creative differences, and let's just say that I've definitely been in lots of situations like that before. However, in July of 1996, the first footage of the game was shown off at the V-Jump Festival in Japan, and Mikami said that there would be new monsters and new characters of Leon S. Kennedy, which is now my current favorite protagonist, and Eliza Walker, which ended up becoming Claire Redfield in the final game, and it was set to release in May of 1997, but around 60 to 80% completion, Mikami wasn't happy with how the game was turning out, so they scrapped it almost entirely and started development all over again. This was later referred to as Resident Evil 1.5, which a build was leaked over a decade ago, but there are too many differences from 1.5 to the final game to go over in this episode. But on January 21st, 1998, Resident Evil 2 was first released on the original PlayStation. Later that year, another version called the DualShock version was released, which gave support for the original DualShock controller, and ended up also getting ports to the Sega Dreamcast, Nintendo GameCube, and PC, but most notably the N64, where it was developed by Angel Studios, which is now Rockstar San Diego, and they're able to port the entire 2 PS1 discs onto a single N64 cartridge, which is quite amazing considering they're able to do that with also adding some exclusive content to that version of the game as well. Now, which version am I going to be playing? Well, if you know me, I obviously like to play the original versions of most games that I play, so I'll be playing the DualShock version of the PlayStation 1 original. But Ethan, you may say, you don't own an original PlayStation currently. Yes, you're right. So I'll be playing the PlayStation 1 Classic version on the PS3 because it's the only version that I currently own, and plus it'll allow me to capture it over HDMI. But before I start talking about the story, I have to mention that I'll be playing it based off of the canon storyline of Claire A, Leon B. If you don't know, Resident Evil 2 came on 2 discs, one for Leon and one for Claire. For example, if you would play as Leon first with disc 1, you will unlock Claire's B scenario after completing the story one time through as Leon. In my case, I'll be playing with disc 2 first and then disc 1 as Leon, so with that out of the way, it's time to see what the original Resident Evil 2 is all about. The story of Resident Evil 2 takes about 2 months after the events of the Spencer Mansion in Resident Evil 1 in the city of Raccoon City. Like honestly, out of all the names they could have named it after, they chose it to name it after these things, but it takes place on September 30th, 1998, which will certainly be a night to remember for our 2 protagonists, being Leon S. Kennedy, which is a rookie police officer on his first day on the job, and a college student named Claire Redfield, which is the sister of Chris Redfield from Resident Evil 1, which came to Raccoon City to find him. They first meet each other at a gas station where Leon ends up shooting a zombie to save Claire, and then they hop into a police car to get away and introduce each other before being interrupted by a zombie hiding in the back seat, which ends up causing them to crash, and then a tractor trailer gets blown up. Now this is where things get a bit different depending on what scenario you are playing on. If you're playing on the A scenario, you will end up going to Kendo's gun shop and meeting Robert Kendo before he is attacked by zombies, and eventually make your way to the Raccoon City Police Department and meet up with an injured officer named Marvin Branov. But in the B scenario, you end up going through the back way of the RPD and see a helicopter crash into the police station as Leon and see something drop out of the sky from another helicopter into the RPD, which is the Tyrant, or what me and other RE fans like to call him is Mr. X, which I'll talk about him more in a bit. Sometime later in the police station, Claire ends up finding out that her brother has went on vacation to Europe and that he left several weeks ago. Moments later, Leon and Claire end up meeting each other and they spot a little girl running through the halls of the RPD. Leon gives Claire a radio to stay in contact while she ends up going after the little girl, which will eventually lead to Claire blowing up the helicopter, leading to the Raccoon City Police Chief's office where she meets Chief Brian Irons as he has the body of the mayor's daughter lying on his desk. Claire then goes into another room next to his office and runs into the little girl from earlier, and we find out that the girl's name is Sherry Birkin, and that there's a big monster hunting her down, but she ends up running away. While that is going on, Leon makes his way to the basement of the RPD, and when he enters the garage, he ends up almost getting shot by an Asian woman named Ada Wong, who asks for Leon's help to find a reporter named Ben. They do, however, find Ben and ask him for any information relating to what was going on in Raccoon City, because Ada was looking for her boyfriend named John, and Ben isn't the most talkative type, as they hear a monster in the distance, and Leon and Ada end up working together, as Ada ends up spotting Sherry after crawling through an air vent a couple minutes later. During that time, Claire makes her way down to the basement and finds Sherry in an area underneath a manhole cover outside of the RPD, where she gets scared and runs off, but is able to assist Claire to find a key to a room where she can find the rest of the 3 stones to start making her way down to the sewers as she runs into Brian Irons again. Claire does try to ask what the G-Virus is, which is what is causing everyone in Raccoon City to turn into zombies. Chief Irons does reveal that William Birkin is the big monster stalking Sherry and that he is her father, and tries to kill Claire before he is killed by a parasite inside of him, and Claire leaves and goes back to Sherry. While that was going on, Leon was looking for the rest of these chessboard pieces to help him get out of the RPD. It does cut to Ben getting killed by Birkin as Leon rushes in soon after, and in his final moments, Ben gives Leon a document containing blackmail on Chief Irons in connection to him getting paid off by Umbrella to keep all their experiments a secret. Ada shows up moments later and says that she was heading to the chemical plant to find her boyfriend John, as Leon is then contacted by Claire and tells Leon that she and Sherry found a way out and that they were going to leave. Leon eventually runs into Birkin and ends up shooting him, which causes him to fall off the railing into the darkness below. He eventually meets up with Ada again and yells at her for running off by saying,
"That was reckless and stupid! Those zombies are everywhere! Not to mention that thing that got Ben!"
I was there, Leon. I know.
Look, Ada. As an officer, it's my job to look out for you. But we're not going to get through this alive if we don't work together, okay?
All right. We'll do this your way for now.
Now, Leon, I don't know a damn thing about women, but I'm pretty sure that's not how you treat someone in a possible world-ending like situation. During that time with Claire and Sherry, they make their way down to the sewers and spot William above them before Sherry falls down a secret passageway and finds a medallion to help them progress, but gets knocked out unconscious, and then William finds her. Claire then makes her way to the sewers and eventually runs into Annette Birkin, which is the wife of William and is also Sherry's mother. Claire does ask Annette if she knows where Sherry's is, before Annette accuses her of being another spy for Umbrella, because in Leon's story she runs into Ada and finds out that she is a spy and that she had found Sherry's pendant, which contained a sample of the G-Virus. But when she talks to Claire, she explains that a few days prior to the breakout in Raccoon City, members of an Umbrella's Special Security Service attempted to kill William Birkin and destroyed the G-Virus. They are nearly able to kill him, but William injects himself with the virus and starts turning into the monster that he is in the present-day storyline, and that the virus spread as a result of rats in the sewers. Claire ends up finding Sherry, but at first ends up taking out this large crocodile or alligator. I don't know, viewer, they look the same to me, and let's just say this thing was really annoying for me to kill, especially as Leon. Claire and Sherry end up finding a way out of the sewers, and they find some train-like thing, but are ambushed by a more mutated version of Birkin, which injures Sherry and infects her, as Claire ends up stopping Birkin and ends up leading Sherry into security offices in the lab and gives Sherry her coat to make her feel better. During all of that, Leon and Ada make their way to the sewers and run into Annette Birkin, which attempts to shoot at Ada, but Leon jumps in front of her and takes the bullet instead. As a result, Ada ends up going after Annette, and what I said before a few minutes ago during Claire's story happens, and Ada ends up running into a large alligator or crocodile thing, and Leon wakes up and kills the crocodile, and Ada helps Leon patch up its gunshot wound, as they do ride the same train as Claire and Sherry, but Ada gets injured and Leon has to fight this mutated version of Birkin for himself. For most of the rest of the game has Leon figuring a way out of the lab and Claire getting a vaccine for Sherry. In Leon's story, he ends up running into Annette and then Mr. X as he heads into another room getting chased by Mr. X, but is rescued by Ada, but is severely injured and is presumed dead, but Mr. X gets killed as a result. In Claire's story, she ends up running into Annette as she gives Claire information about the G-Virus before she gets killed by William. During that time, the lab is about to explode and Claire tells Leon to get Sherry from the security office and bring her onto the train. While that is going on, Claire ends up defeating another version of Birkin and is able to defeat him. While Leon is getting the train prepared, he deals with another version of Birkin, and all of a sudden Ada appears with a rocket launcher and Leon is able to take him out and proceeds to power up the train, and Claire's makes it just in time onto the train and the vaccine is able to work. Now, if this was the A scenario, this is where the game would end, but in the B scenario, they end up taking out another version of Birkin and escape the train out to the middle of nowhere, and that's basically what happens in the story of the original Resident Evil 2. Overall, I liked the story of the original Resident Evil 2. I thought the plot was solid and the characters were quite enjoyable, despite the really cringeworthy voice acting. I feel that it was more in the delivery of the lines than the actual spoken dialogue itself, but it was overall still a pretty fun time. It's especially interesting comparing the two versions between the original and the remake because there are quite a few big differences between them. But I've only talked about the story right now, so let's finally talk about the gameplay and graphics. Okay, Resident Evil 2 plays very similar to RE1. Yes, that means the annoying tank controls return. I know I complained about it in the RE1 episode, but something about the tank controls just feels a bit better and more correct, if that makes any sense. I don't know, man, it just felt better in my opinion. It was probably because I got more adjusted to the controls this time around, and also the annoying long door opening animations also return, and for modern players going back to play this, it can be a real pain, but just like the tank controls, it just felt right this time around. Throughout most of the game, you explore the Raccoon City Police Department, which as a person who has played the remake first, is quite similar, but there are some big differences between the two versions. There is also the sewers of Raccoon City and the Umbrella Laboratories. You do this while solving puzzles and getting key items to progress, while also shooting enemies. We have zombies as either normal civilians or infected police officers. The lickers, which are these red crawling things that have a long tongue and have their brain exposed and jump really high. I get it that this was supposed to be scary for 1998, but playing this today isn't really that scary. Like, I find the lickers in the RE2 remake a lot more scarier than the ones in the original. There's also this harder variant of them to kill. The giant spiders also make a return from Resident Evil 1, and thank God Capcom did not decide them to put them in the remake, because due to my arachnophobia, I might have had an actual heart attack. There's also these plant-like creatures in the lab, and the dogs in the basement of the RPD, and those aren't that hard to deal with. But we certainly can't talk about Resident Evil 2 without talking about it. Yeah, the Tyrant, or Mr. X as he's known by fans of the series, is a large stone-looking man who follows Leon around occasionally. It's so scripted in the original that once you play through the game enough times, he doesn't really become that much of a threat. But in the RE2 remake, holy sh**, this man keeps scaring the absolute out of me. Like 1 minute I'll be solving a puzzle and the next minute, bam, I'm dead because of him just sneaking up on me. So in my opinion, I don't see the original Mr. X as much of a threat, but RE2 remake Mr. X, well, that's a different story. But anyway, you get other weapons and upgrades like the shotgun for Leon or the crossbow for Claire. You do have to save with ink ribbons at the typewriter stations just like in RE1, but after a while I got used to doing that, so I don't find it as much of a problem in comparison to last time. There is also your inventory with a health bar that will change based on how injured you are, and you can fix yourself with either a first aid spray or herbs with green, red, and blue variants, which combining certain herbs will give you different effects. There is also these other documents and secrets you can find that just add lore to the series, and just like RE1, you also have the item box to store other items for later. Also, Leon has a lighter and Claire has a lockpick, which makes their abilities a bit different from each other. If you had played RE2 enough, you can unlock the modes of The Force Survivor, where you get to play as this really cool military character named Hunk as he makes his way to escape the RPD, and also the mode of The Tofu Survivor, where you get to play as a piece of tofu for some reason. But I wasn't able to get those options for myself, and there's also other costumes to unlock for Leon and Claire. Well, how do I feel about the game's visuals? Well, considering I was playing on the PlayStation 1 version, it looks alright, I guess. The PC port definitely looks way better, but for the PS1, it looks okay. I like how much brighter it is in comparison to the remake, and it runs at a pretty solid 30 FPS, and on lower resolution screens, the pre-rendered backgrounds do look nice. Also, I love the music in this game. It gives off the vibe of either really calming or really intense and scary, which I think is perfect for this game. Well, that is the original Resident Evil 2. I'll definitely be talking about the remake in the near future, but the original is still fun despite its weird controls and other weird quirks, which for a lot of modern day players will find it quite strange. But if you played the remake like I did, it's certainly worth playing still, just to even see what's similar and what's different. But overall, I really enjoyed it and I still think it's really fun. And two other things I'd like to say. First, Leon looks much better as a blonde, and Cleon makes a lot more sense than Aeon in my opinion.